Hello everybody, it's me again, and I'm going to start a new series of videos related to iOS and Swift 3 in particular. I am starting with a new group of students that will be studying iOS development, so I thought we'll start fresh with them and start new series of videos on iOS 10 and Swift 3. Okay, so the objective of this video here today is to introduce the students to the playground and look at the syntax of Swift 3. It's not going to be much different, but I will try to do a better job than the previous videos, give you more details. So let's get started. Now, by now, you should have downloaded Xcode, and then you download Xcode from the App Store. You just go to the App Store, and then you download Xcode, and then you should get Xcode 8. Once you started, one of the options here is to get started with the playground. So you can click on the playground, and I'm going to create my playground 1. Do that. Okay, and I'm going to call it Swift 3. All right. Next, and I will put it in this folder, and then we're done. Okay. The playground, if you are not familiar with the playground, what is a playground? A playground is a place, as the name suggests, you can try things and play with code and test your result before you actually include it into your project. I'm going to explain a few things first here about Xcode. First, you have here different views, different panels. So you can click on this to show you the like the project components. Okay, so I have source, where source is kept. I have resources, another folder is inside of it where we keep things like sounds, images, and stuff like that. Okay, and you can have actually look at here, and you can see the output of your code. If you're doing any printing, this is like your console. This is where the output will be listed. Here, where you can examine the variables as you start typing, and then you can see the different values. Here, it'll show you like this is like inspectors. If you're like, you can have like identity inspectors, for example. Later on, you'll see properties, documentations. That will be all in here. Okay, so you got different views. You got different views for the playground. Okay. And then this will carry over in the next video, all right? And then also in here, you have, for example, you have snippet of code that you can just drag and drop in here to test, okay? You can have your documentations, all right? Right now, let's just start with the basics of Swift language. And we'll get started in a minute, okay? First, what you see here, these are the things that comes already included into your project. This is your import. This is the UI kit. UI kit, it has user interface kit. It means it includes all the classes, library, whatever you want to call it, that helps you develop apps. For example, if you want an image, you want a label, you want a view, this will be all included in UI kit, okay? It's already included for us, but that's what the kit is, user interface kit, okay? And we have another variable. This variable is called var. The name of it is string, and it has a value, okay? And this value is hello playground. Before that, we have actually here documentation. Now, if you're familiar with any programming language before, documentations are used to document code. to explain the things about what you're trying to do. So in this lesson, I'm going to do what? I'm going to say, in this lesson, we will cover the basics of Xcode IDE, which is what we've talked about. What else? I'm going to also cover the basics of Swift language, in particular variables. Okay. All right. Now, this is how you do documentation. You can comments. This is how you put a beginning here by slash and asterisk and close it by asterisk and slash. Now, I'm going to show you one thing in here. In just like Java in the old days, you can actually embed Javadoc. You can format these things here better. And the way you do it, you can look at the editor here. You can see show rendered markup. Okay. Notice this one is different than this one. Why is this different than this one? I'll explain to you why. So if you look at again, editor, show row values. If you remember in Java, you used to put 2 asterisks here. And then what happens is that when you generate documentation, it generates like almost an HTML documentation, all right? Here, you have actually that colon. So if I put a colon here after this and do the same thing, product, and then, sorry, editor, and then show rendered markup, notice it looks different now. It looks like actually formatted text, not boring code-like text. Okay. Now you can do things like this too in here. There's all, you can search online to find the documentation on this, but you can do things like this. You can do, for example, you can highlight this word or what do you call it? Make it bold by putting asterisk in front of it and asterisk in front of it after, and then you do product again, editor, and then show. Notice. Sorry, it is actually not bold. It is actually italic. All right. Okay, and you can put headers. Again, you go back editor here and then do show raw markup. For example, if I want to make this as a header, so you can put a pound in front of it, and then in editor product again, show render markup. You can see, well, it didn't like that. Why? Should be better than that. Editor markup. Maybe because no space between it. So I needed to put a space here, and then you do again editor markup. Okay, show render markup. You can see that everything after that pound until you hit the enter is actually highlighted. All right, let's get back to it and show the raw value. So that is documentation, code documentation. Either you use the formatted documentation or just plain documentation. Okay, and the difference, if you just want a plain documentation, you don't put the colon after the asterisk. All right. Okay, let's look at this thing here. What is this? What is this thing called var string? To define a variable, there are 2 ways to define variables in Java, in Swift. I'll just put a comment here. There are 2 ways. Not 2 ways. There are 2 types of variables you can define. One of them is called variable. That means it's changeable. The other one is called, one of them is changeable. The other one is constant. what is the difference between these two? Well, variable, changeable, you just have to use the word keyword in front of it, var. And once you say it's var, it means that I can put new value in it, no problem. So you define it once, and then the next time you can just say string equal hello there, okay? And now you're done, okay? So that is var, and once you define it once, you can use it anywhere in your code. The other different is that, for example, the other type was constant. For example, I can say let name equal Ali, for example. Now this variable cannot be changed, okay? To you, they look the same, but this one you can change its value in your code. This one, it's constant, okay, cannot be changed. And these type of variables are good where you don't expect the value to change, or like you want to use it once and then that's it, okay? You don't change its value, so you define it as a let. Okay, so if I do this right now, if I say name equal different name, it would give me an error. It says you got an error here, right? It says change, you're trying to change this let to a var to make it immutable. Mutable means that you can, here it give you the actually a suggestion how to fix it. You can just say fix it, change it into a variable var, and then you'll be okay. So if I do this, it changed it for me. All right, this is a nice feature with Xcode, allow you to make suggestions, and most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, even more, it's correct. So you just simply follow the instruction. Okay, so I'm gonna do it again. So I'm gonna hit Command Z, and that's it. All right. Now notice here on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, it's actually showing you, I'm gonna do this here. It's showing you the value as it changes in your program. So when you define it, you're defining the value here, and then you can see the eye to see what's the value, inspect it, okay? This is what the value, what's the value in this variable. And for those who are new to programming, variables are like memory locations where you store things temporarily while the program is running. And once the program is finished, that program is gone. All right. All right. So this is the this is where you can inspect the values. And here's what happened to it after you execute that line. If there was an error here, you will not see this output here. Okay. Actually showed it. If you try to run it here, this is run playground. It did not work, right? All right. So to fix it, you have to fix the error to run it again, and once you run it again, it looks fine. All right. So that's how you inspect the value. You can put a plus sign, and then like here. Now what happens here? Say after you define the variable, here's the value. Here's what happened to that variable. All right. So this basically pins the value underneath it, so you can see what's happening to your values. Now again, what is this? This is like a playground, right? So you are trying to test and play. So there's no harm in trying things. You can do anything you want in here, and this is a great tool for people that wants to use to learn programming. All right, for the first time. Okay, so now notice what happens here when we define variables. All I have to do is that var, string, and then the value, or you can define it just as a constant. Now, well, in computer terminology, there are usually numeric values, and there is actually string values or text values. Of course, there are other type of data, which is the binary data. But for now, we're interested in numeric and non-numeric values. And so what is this here? Well, if you're new to programming, this didn't seem hard, but if you are familiar with programming, you'd say, well, how do you define a variable and give it a type? because I want to be able to define a variable numbers where I can add numbers to it or do some calculations. Well, Swift, just like JavaScript, is that it assumes the value that you put in it defines the type. So what happens is that you said that when I put string value into this variable, it assumes that you're defining a string. And now, from now on, you can only put strings in this variable, all right? So what happens here, how does it know a string? It's because of these double quotation. You see this, double quotation, here's a double quotation. So now this is a string. Well, what about numbers? You can say, for example, define, you say var temp, temperature equal, for example, 25. So now what happens? You define a variable and this is 25. Now the type of variable, this type of variable is different. This is a number. This is a string. So you can do things, for example, like this, temp equal temp plus 2. Okay, what happens to that? It's adding 2 to it, all right? Now if I say, look, if I say string equal string plus 2, you will get an error. Because why? Because this is a string and you're trying to add a number to it. You cannot add numbers to a string. It can be the same type. You can put 2 strings together by just simply making this as a string, and now it likes it because you're adding a string to a string. Well, when you add a string to a string, you're not doing any addition. You're doing what we call concatenation. You're putting 2 things together. So I'm concatenating this value to this value, and this is your result. All right? There are, hello there, 2. Okay, if you want to put a space between that, you can just put that, and then now you can get hello there space. Okay? All right, so that is how you define variables. You could do, so there are 2 types, the constant type and then the variable type. Here's how you define numeric and how do you define string. Well, let's take it a little bit farther. How do we defining variable types? What are the different variable types? We talked about 2. Well, what if I wanted to if I want to define something specific? I want to specifically say this is a string. Well, how do you do that? You can just say, for example, city, var city equal to what? Equal to Dubai, for example. Okay. And then what happens now? It's still a string, but what if I wanted to say, yes, I wanted to make sure it is a string? You can just do this. You can say string here, okay? And then now you can specify the type. I am specifically saying this is a string. Now, there is no difference between this one and this one, for example, here. But just to be on the safe side, you can do it that way. It makes a difference when you're defining numbers. So for example, say we have temp already. Let's say we're gonna grade, okay? You can say grade int equal 89, okay? And now I specifically say it's an integer. What is an integer? What is, we'll talk about more different types, but what's an integer? An integer is a type of variable where I can store only digital data. I mean, whole numbers. So this only stores whole numbers. Okay. There are different data types, of course, but for now, we'll just stick with this integer, okay? Now, what about decimal? Well, there are 2 types of decimal, but the one that we use quite often, you'll see there are 2 types. There's one is called, for example, you can say oh, X, whatever, Y. And then here you can specify, for example, you can say float. Okay, you can see when you say float, you can have float 32, 64, 80. What for beginners, just use a float. The difference between all of these is how big is the number you're trying to store in these variables. And believe me, these are huge, okay? In most cases, you don't need to worry about it, okay? Unless you're doing something scientific and requires precisions and things like that. In most cases, you don't need to worry about it, okay? And then now I can do this, for example, 0.5, all right? So this allows me to store decimal. Because store whole numbers, but it gives you an extra edge by allowing to store also decimal. You can do, for example, another one that is very common, which is X, for example, and the type of variable here I'm going to do, instead of float, I'm going to use double. Double and float are practically the same. The difference is one of them holds more, okay? Float holds more, I think. Okay, same decimal numbers. Okay, so that's how you define whole numbers. You can define what do we call decimal numbers. There are two. There's another one that is common, we use quite often, which is, for example, status, okay, or error status, okay. And this is used, we define it as what we call Boolean type. And then this Boolean type can only take true or false values, okay. We use these type of variables like true is capital letter. What happened here? Let's see, maybe small letter. Okay, true Boolean variables are used, for example, to check for things in your code. Like you can set a flag. If I have an error, set this flag to true, or if I don't have an error, set it to false, and things like that. As we learn more, you'll see the value of these. Okay. Now the last one that I want to cover here, you can say, for example, var grade or letter grade. Okay, that's just to be formatted correctly. I'm going to say letter grade. Let's do that. And that type is character. What is the difference of what is a character? Character allows you, it stores one letter only, okay? And the difference between this and string is that string you use double quotation. We'll get an error here. Oh, wow, even I guess I was wrong. So what happens is that you use double quotation, but you cannot have more than one letter. Let me try this. Yeah, it doesn't like it. So because it is similar to a string in a way, but you can only store one thing only, all right? All right, I'm not gonna cover any more of this in this lesson because I think it's already long. So just to recap what we've done, we've talked about playground. What is a playground? How to use a playground. We talked about the different panels in Xcode. We talked about how to define variables in Xcode. The different types, there are two data types. One of them is called, not two data types, sorry, different. There are two ways to define variables. One of them is called variable and one of them is constant. And in Xcode, they use this quite often. Are variables that you want to change their values inside your programs, things that changes as you go along. If a person is playing a game and their score changes, that means that you need to define their score as variables. The other type is constants, where things that do not change, they stay the same. You put values in them, and then they stay the same throughout your program. Both of these are very common. Okay, so you'll see them a lot in Xcode. There are different variable types that you can use in your code. I just showed you how to define them today. In the next video, I'll show you how we use them and how we print them. You have different data types. One of them is string to store sentences, if you will. Integer to store whole numbers. For example, things that age, for example, or things that do not require decimal point. You have things that do type of data that requires decimal point, float, and double, that both of them used to store decimal number. One is bigger, twice the size of the other. Both of them are popular. Either one is fine. Okay. Boolean is a type of flag, a type of variable that stores. This is related to the scientist bool. Okay, and then the Boolean can only be true or false. And the last one is character, where you can store one letter only. All right. I'll see you in the next video. In the next video, we'll take the same playground and then we start adding to it. All right. I'll see you in the next video in a minute. Okay.